Welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure Weekly Update. My name is Marcos Nogueira. I'm your host, as usual, for the last 46 episodes. And with me, I have a special guest, first time on this episode and on the other 45 as well. Andrew Lowes.
I was going to say, welcome to Azure Centric Weekly Podcast.
Yeah.
My name is Marcos
Uh,
Nogueira.
yes, we are.
It's funny, we get used to hearing things and then we just it becomes a habit and process. But that's funny.
Completely. But
Oh my
it's
gosh.
it's been a good week, I have to say. Not very busy on Azure, which is good because last time was a kind of a busy week, let's say, right? But this one we didn't have to cut too much. It's just outside of our realm. Some of those HD insights that we are not very familiar, and some of those kind of updates. But if we can choose a theme for today, I always say that is a kind of a defender slash storage kind of theme, right?
Hmm. Yes, and yet not storage defense,
Yeah,
right? So
storage defense. Yeah,
uh,
I like that.
it's not defense, it's defense. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say there's some good releases around some security and definitely around storage
Yes.
as well. So I think yeah, really good updates this week. And it's a bit deceiving, right? Because we don't have a big number, but within a couple of them, there's some many
Oh
points,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah. It's going to be a very good episode. I foresee that. And again, we are back on track. We released the last episode last week. We are doing this right now, and we are back on track, and that's what we want because we did grow. This week, apparently, um, some of our followers, let's call it this way, didn't like our attire, so we are
we're
more.
blaming the bow tie again. Oh my gosh.
Not
It was a Christmas tree bow tie. What's not to love? You don't even have to like Christmas. It's just trees,
exactly,
right?
but
You know?
apparently, our followers that didn't appreciate the bow tie, I thought that was to that. Must be they didn't like
And
us.
that's okay. We're back to the traditional hoodie. It's
Yeah,
of course Calgary Flames season. Yep, that's right, for months.
exactly.
So yes, we had to cheer for them last night. Pretty good. We have games coming up kind of over the next few days, so it's going to be really, really good. And thus, I should probably show the rest of it, right? It is actually a Flames. Yeah, see.
Ooh, the old Flames one. That's beautiful.
Yes,
I have to say,
a little more
a little
classic.
more classic.
That's
Yes, let's do that. But let's start with our thanking our followers, and saying farewell to the ones that they leave us. I hope I
bon
hope that
voyage,
one
folks.
day you come back. But
Come on back. We'll publish more
that's okay.
regularly. We did make a
If you
commitment,
are if
and
you are new,
we'll do
if you
that.
are new, please subscribe. Uh, Help us on the channel. We are on the verge of reaching a milestone. Uh, reaching a milestone,
He's gonna do it. Okay, that's pretty funny.
and
All right.
which is awesome. But help us out in this case by subscribing, by smashing that like button or the unlike button. For us, we are doing here what we are doing here is with love for you in this case, and basically recording our weekly conversation that we have about Azure. It's a way that we
Absolutely.
can that we are me in this case as an Azure MVP, and you probably as a future Azure MVP, that we can get an up to date with all the Azure podcasts and with all the Azure updates. And it's been great for me. We've been receiving great feedback so far. regarding the open conversation and not at all kind of recorded and have an agenda. We basically hit the record button and let the flow goes.
There is definitely no script
No,
here.
at all.
The only thing that's pre-formatted is the articles that we
Yeah.
choose, and
And the
just
source
for
is the same.
transparency,
Is always the same
we
since.
choose. Yeah, it's always from the same source, from
Absolutely.
Azure updates and Azure blog. So it's all Microsoft news, all Azure news, and honestly, we choose it moments before we press the record
Exactly.
button. So there's no prep, there's no storylines, there's no backstory. It's just live.
And again, if you are new to the channel, once again, don't forget to subscribe, right? But the idea over here is to bring our vision of working every single day in the field with Azure, and how these updates will influenciate or will add more things that we can do it, and different ways that we can do it on a daily basis, right? And that's the goal over here.
Absolutely.
There are other podcasts that talk way more deeper in specifically some of those updates. Over here is just for an informal way for you to get up to date with the updates. I know that's a redundancy,
Exactly.
but it's literally is. Okay, enough with.
Well, not really. It's tricky to stay up to date with all the different things. So
Absolutely.
we filter things a little bit more infrastructure oriented and a little bit more security kind of focused as well.
Absolutely.
And we're here to kind of provide our context, like you said,
Absolutely.
right?
So let's roll, and let's start with the first one. So welcome back, and let's jump to the first one. And the first one, okay, apparently it's not the first one. Oh my God.
That's okay. So you fight the little gremlins, and I'll say we're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So first, we're going to talk, take a look, and we'll chat about the public preview updates, kind of coming to the close for November 2021.
Yeah.
So first up, we have the prioritized security actions by data sensitivity, which is actually powered through Azure Purview and integrated into Defender for Cloud, right? So this one is, again, we're talking about the preview features here. So that's a really powerful way that we can gain insights and extend controls over our data over a very large distributed environment. So if we think about how many services are there, give or take, in Azure? It's like 280 something, or I don't even know anymore. I can't keep track. There's a lot.
Yes.
So Purview helps us to not only kind of wrangle some of that data, but helps us to report on and understand where we have control issues or where we may have some egress issues around data and sensitivity labels and things like that. So, and of course, the next one, if you want to take this one, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, this prioritize one, it's good because, like any part of the Defender, especially when we are dealing with DLP, and funny enough, we had a conversation today about that, right? It's like you create those sensitive labels, and your sensitivity regarding your data classification or inside of your organization. Be able to do this, and this again is in preview. Be able to prioritize, for example, something that is the highest sensitivity, like a top secret or whatever it is that is your data classification, and prioritize the data or prioritize the actions that you want to do it regarding those data, because it's way more sensitive than the other ones, right? It's awesome because now it's like you have the rules by order. I see these as the rules of urgency, right? And by having the urgency, if come the rule, or if I have some data that is being that needs some action, and a lot of times, because this is a cloud services, it goes against a queue, right? And DLP has been always, for example, some of the service that sometimes it takes a little bit more time to just basically update and to get those rules in action, right? Be able to prioritize that, it's awesome. It's what we really need, because we might have a lot of rules or actions that they are with lower sensitive data, and when this comes, it will basically jump into the front of the queue. So, which is pretty powerful, makes everything more streamlined. Okay, let's call it this way, streamlined regarding the way that we handle all of that data sensitivity regarding everything that we trafficking, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And there is kind of the other piece, that snapshot export,
Yes.
right? So in Defender for Cloud, we can, generate these detailed security alerts, and we have all the good recommendations. So we think about those recommendations coming back. So this is kind of the programmatic way that we can ingest things. So it's like a continuous export of those feeds that are containing the recommendations and the security alerts. So this past couple of weeks, I've been referring to this as the tool formerly known as Azure Security Center. Yeah. And if we think about those security alert feeds coming out of there, those are ones that we want to make sure we get the security team's eyes on. And this is a great one to test in your dev or your testing environment. Remembering, of course, that it's in preview, so just kind of be cautious with that. I always think of, we put a feature like this in and it's awesome, it works great, and then all of a sudden it stops, but we don't realize it for maybe a few hours. We've missed those few hours of security alerts that we need to have eyes on pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
So
I see this with
why,
different eyes. I see this especially, okay, especially for professionals like us, that we are architects, right? That we're going there, and usually we come to the organization, we start looking at, for example, secure score, or start looking for Defender for Cloud, and at that moment, okay, I usually grab a screenshot. To be honest, I grab a screenshot. And the reason that I grab a screenshot is to compare at the end of the project of what we had and what was implemented, to see the difference. But along the way, it happens that a lot of those times the rules change. Okay, Microsoft update those rules because for different reasons, right? They update those rules, or by enabling some part, there is a bunch of other rules that they are coming along with the service, and the secure score goes down, right? A lot of those times. Yeah. And then we say, but you told me that at the beginning of the project, the secure score should be higher. And say, yes, true. But a secure score should be higher regarding the rules that we have at that present moment. Now we have way more rules, right? At the end, because we have way more services to monitoring or to validate, and now the secure score can come higher or lower, but we have way more services. Be able to do this snapshot allow us to that moment in time to freeze what is being the recommendations and the security findings. And now we have something way more it's missing the word, but way more directly to the customer, right? That it's comparable to the end result, because now it's that.
Well, we can filter it down based on just the relevant categories, right? And that's one of the things that's really cool about this snapshot feature is, like you were saying, we start a project. So if you think January 1st, here's our snapshot of these measurements, we can compare those exact same measurements, say on June 1st, to be able to have kind of that 6-month delta of the score was, I'm going to be generous today and say 40% when we come in, see them being optimistic already, and 55% or 60 or whatever. But when you hit certain milestones, and then by June 1st, we're at 82%, for example. Yeah. So pretty optimistic scoring, but I think, it's tough though, right? Because it is, like you say, it's an ever-changing landscape. And one of the great things about Azure Secure Score, Microsoft Secure Scores, is that they adapt for the current landscape. So when there's a new threat, they start measuring your protections against those new threats.
Absolutely.
As soon as the rule is published. And it's really important, because that's what I always tell the teams that we work with is, we need to visit Secure Score on a regular basis. And I think this tool is going to help to draw that data out in a really meaningful way, that we don't have to go to a dashboard. We can use whatever tooling we want, or even build custom reports around that. So pretty exciting to think of the possibilities. I know it was a small update, and we get excited about these silly things.
It's not silly, I think, because this is important. This is the part that we work every single day, especially with the Defender that used to be the Azure Security Center and the Azure Defender as well. And that's right. The best segue for the next one. And the next update is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud, or the GA updates on November 2021. Okay, we have to remember one thing is this is the last month updates. I know that we are in December already, but this is the updates that coming in GA. And in November, beginning of November, we had the beautiful Ignite. So a lot of those updates, okay, that we are covering, not all of them, but the majority of them, we already talk on this podcast, okay? Because especially, and I highly recommend you guys visit the Book of News, all right? That the Book of News of Ignite 2021, and they are coming. Like the first one, it's well aware of everyone, because we already mentioned here, even on the previous update, that is the Azure Security Center and Azure Defender now becomes Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So Microsoft announced during the Ignite that all of the Defender suite, okay, the Azure Security Center changing the name, the Azure Defender, that is the Defender suite for Azure, is changing the name to Defender for the Cloud. Even the part of the Office 365, it's inside of that Defender for the Cloud. So
exactly. Sorry, I'm so excited. It's bringing a tear to my eye. My eyes started to water here. I apologize.
Yeah, but with that, for example, some of those updates, that's why we are not covering over here all of them, that we already mentioned, is the new CSPM for AWS, the threat protection for the AWS on the EKS, the Kubernetes, right? And the EC2s, that they are exactly the same as our virtual machines on Azure, for example. The part of, do you want to cover some of them?
Well, actually, I think two that really jump out are the next two for me, right? Kind of in my world a little bit, which is the expanded security control assessments with the Azure Security Benchmark version 3. So there's a lot of new controls. Yes. There's a lot of there's a couple removed ones as well. So visit the site, dig in, take a look. There's been some changes. If you do have these compliance and security benchmark templates added, go in and have another bit of a preview and rerun your reports and your current status. There's some cool changes in there that we should be monitoring now. The other one that I really like is the Microsoft Sentinels connector, the optional bidirectional alert synchronization has been released for GA. This is huge. So I don't know if people necessarily realize this. So two things. Azure Sentinel has become Microsoft Sentinel. So when we think about those name changes, not a huge switch here. It's still Sentinel at the core. What's really awesome about bidirectional alert synchronization is, let's say you take your Sentinel incidents, you're piping those into ServiceNow. Well, when you close that ServiceNow ticket, we had to write some customizations to get the Sentinel ticket to also close. Now, the data connector is bidirectional, which means the alert sends to ServiceNow, and whatever your ticketing or systems are sends back, and the data connector knows, hey, that incident's now closed. And guess what? Automatically can close our Sentinel alert in the incident dashboard. So this is really, really freaking cool. And this has been kind of an area where we've had to do a lot of customization around in the past. So it's really
Yeah,
awesome.
and works the other way around as well, because if
Exactly.
the in this case the incident is coming from, for example, like you mentioned, your the what's the name of the product that you mentioned?
Sentinel, ServiceNow.
ServiceNow is coming to Sentinel, and you are doing an investigation, and then it's been resolved either automatically by Sentinel, or you just doing the investigation. You close that on Sentinel, automatically will close directly to ServiceNow. So
Exactly.
it's going to be the bidirectional. There is a conversation that is not only one way, but it doesn't matter where you're going to close that, which is always good, because if we compare this with the traditional method, is yes, you have your ticket system that's coming from ServiceNow, right? And then you need to go on your other tooling for the investigation and going forward with all of that. You close that, and then you always have to come back to ServiceNow to close the ticket. Uh, in this
Exactly.
case, you don't need it. It's really more streamlined, and it's going on that. But using Sentinel, for example, one of the big things that they did is a huge integration, for example, with Kubernetes. The
Mm-hmm.
part of Kubernetes now that you have the recommendations that you had before on Azure Security Center, now Defender for Cloud, now you is being pushed to Sentinel as well. So they Sentinel starts to be the big kind of tool to just grab all of that information in one single pane of glass, and to be able to just doing that. So if you want a tip for you guys that you are seeing this podcast or hearing this podcast, take a look very deeply on Sentinel, because it is already one of the biggest tools in Azure, regarding special security and regarding special monitoring and regarding special everything, basically, because now everything is connected to Sentinel on bidirectional. You can even on Sentinel monitoring what's going on your 365 world. And
Mm-hmm.
it's bidirectional again. So take a look on that. Try to learn more. Try to just going on that deeply, because you will not regret it in the future, especially if you are inside of the let's call it security realm inside of Azure on cloud, because with Sentinel you can basically monitoring even other cloud providers or even on premise.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, we could get into the weeds really quick.
Absolutely.
There is two things that I want to chat about kind of on this one. And I know I promised I'd keep it to two, but I'm just going to add another two more. It's fine. It's like an IT 5 minutes. It's
Exactly.
okay. So the two other pieces that really kind of support a little bit around the Defender theme and the Sentinel and security themes is the threat and vulnerability management has been added as a vulnerability assessment solution. So solutions in Sentinel are kind of a package deal, right? You get a bunch of different things with them and you deploy it as one and you configure it as one. So it really is a solution in this case. So it's really cool. Now, the other one that's very much kind of related here is the auto provisioning of the vulnerability assessment solutions released for GA as well. So these vulnerability assessments and vulnerability scanning, this is something that I talk about frequently with my customers. And this is an area where we can use things like the Qualys scanner. We can build measurements within our vulnerability assessments, and we can use those to drive actions, automated actions from our Sentinel environments. So go ahead. I know we're not here to talk about that specifically, and that could easily take an hour just on its own. So I'll be careful. But go and explore it. Have a look at this. It's kind of a bit of an innocuous looking update. It's Defender for Cloud updates that they did in November. Remember, like you were saying, we had Ignite in November 2021. So there is a lot of hidden gems in some of these monthly summaries that we're seeing over the next couple of weeks through December here. So
and even the part of growing this defender one, like Defender for Endpoint now supports Linux even on server side of it. It's huge.
Yeah, that's
fantastic because now it's not only Windows VMs that we can enable the Defender and all of that part, but the threat and vulnerability management add as a solution, and it's in GA. So all of that part of what usually I call the behavioral engine of looking what's going on the server or endpoint. Let's call it endpoint, no matter if it's a server or not. Is going to be massive because now it's no longer on Windows only. You can do it on Linux as well, and basically grabbing that behavioral engine to see if anything changed by an action of a user or something like that, automatically generates an alert, and you can even automate those processes, for example, to just isolate that machine. So if anything happens, only happens on that machine, it doesn't spread on your environment. So it's pretty cool the things that they did regarding the month of November, right? And that explains a lot. Explains a lot.
It does, yeah. And the isolation of machines is part of an automated response. If you aren't doing that with your solution today, you should really investigate Defender as a solution as a whole for Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud. These are kind of baseline features, in my opinion. Anyways, let's not get stuck on that. Let's go on to the next one. It's almost just as exciting, right?
Yeah.
So public preview availability of virtual machine restore points.
Absolutely.
So something we've had in Hyper-V and VMware, kind of when we think about our on-premises solutions, we've had that around for a while, but we had to use Azure Backup to achieve restore points when we think about VMs in the cloud. So this is a preview feature, and it's also going to be available, which is really exciting to me. You and I were talking about this even today, using ARM resources to call the restore point collections. So it's been very well thought out. It's been a long time coming. Everybody's talked about this with a lot of passion for a long time, and really exciting to know that it is almost here.
Yes.
So now we have the ability, like for example, if we're testing a piece of software, we can take a restore point, do the software test. If something goes all kinds of sideways, we can roll back to the restore point really easily now. So we don't even have to do a full restore from backup. It's just a restore point. And I think we used to call them checkpoints in Hyper-V, if I'm remembering my terminology correctly.
Yes, they call it restore points. But the part that I like about this is they support multi-disk application consistent snapshots, which means that if I have an application, tier application, let's call web application and database, I can synchronize that restore point as a consistency. So if I need to restore back because something changed or whatever it is that we wanted, we are able to do that. Okay. and
Absolutely.
it's really good, and is the part that we did it because the what does this allow us is to restore in case of data loss, corruption, or disaster. Because one of the things that I've been criticizing a lot in this case, um, Azure, is the use of VHDs and not VHDX.
Yes,
Okay, so
exactly.
VHDs, if you are familiar with Hyper-V and all of that, it's the first version of the virtual hard disks. Okay, it's the version. That's why Microsoft. There is a reason that Microsoft in 2012, 2012, yes, not 2012, 2012.
I knew what you
Yeah,
meant. It's
I
fine.
just want to be clear. Uh, that they switch from VHDs to VHDX. Okay, because
Yes.
VHDX it's way more corruption in this case proof, if we might say. We didn't have exactly the same problems that we had on the VHDs, but because of compatibility with a lot of things that happening, and Microsoft has always been really good on this recto compatibility, but sometimes they kind of shoot themselves on the foot because of that. Um, this it was one of the features that it should come way earlier because there is a lot of corruption on VHDs. Luckily, so far, I've been in all the projects that I've been using, I didn't have any type of issues. I can count with even one hand the types of issues that I had during the last years. So their methodology of doing that it was great, but still everyone that have an Hyper-V and knows Hyper-V like me since the beginning, it gets a little bit nervous of getting VHDs and not VHD access, for example.
Yeah.
This
So this is kind of that Gen 1, Gen
via
2 challenge
uh
that we always struggle with, right?
it's yeah, Gen 1 and Gen 2, it's more related to the it's like the BIOS versus UEFI, right? So
Well, yeah.
it's more related to that because it really depends on what system are you doing. So for example, Linux system, they are a little bit more cranky regarding the UEFI. The new in this case Windows, the recent one, you cannot even install, I think, on BIOS mode, something like that, right? Or you can do it, but it's going to be so slow that and so insecure that you don't want to install anything else besides UEFI. And there is a lot of other things that you can do, right? But this version of VHD is always been what I call the Achilles of Azure because it works. Right now, it works really well, but I think they should improve this for a VHDX. Um, I don't know what is the reason behind it. Probably I've been totally unfair with all of this. I didn't. I did ask.
Oh, don't worry. You'll get an email. I'm sure you
Absolutely,
will.
absolutely. Or what the worst can do is they will cancel my Azure MVP, but that's okay. We still have this podcast.
Hey, we're talking about milestones here, right?
Exactly.
So we're getting there.
Absolutely.
If and we apologize to those of you listening and viewing, not part of our conversation right before we clicked on record. We were talking about an absolutely hilarious milestone that we're really gunning for. We're gonna hit it. It's a YouTube measurement, and we're really shooting for it. And let me tell you, we have set the bar
Hi.
so low in this
Oh,
case
I thought it was
that I
hi.
think, well, it's high for us because the relativity of the whole thing. I don't know how to measure the scale. We broke the measuring tape trying to figure it out. It wrapped around the thing, and I was going to make a limbo comparison. Like we've set the bar so low that even our shoe can't get under it now. So we're
Yeah,
we're going off the rails real
completely.
fast here. Anyways, so I heard there was another cool
Yes.
announcement that you wanted to share.
India Central availability zones now general availability. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the new regions, right?
It is,
It,
yes, recent.
or
I guess,
recent.
yes.
Let's go this way. The recent, and now they are basically saying that 3 unique physical separated locations or zones on the single region is bringing to high availability. So again, this is going again on a statement that Microsoft says that by 2025, all the regions supported by Microsoft will have availability zones. Okay, we'll have
Correct.
two or more. In this case, I think the aim is 3 availability zones on every single region, which has allow us to just starting, okay, grabbing in this case the availability inside of Azure, and goes again on the same conversation that we always have, that it's not because it's in Azure that is high available. We need
Well, no, it's based on our configuration
exactly.
within, right?
We need to we need in this case to like I think using one of your terms, we need to plan for disaster and hope for the best.
Exactly. Yep.
Did I get it right?
I've used that almost perfect. Yeah. So we always plan for the worst.
Yes.
But we hope for the best. So when I think of BCDR, or business continuity and disaster recovery, part of business continuity in my mind is driven through, first of all, business requirements. So is this piece of software and its related components, is that system needing to be always turned on?
Yes.
So if the answer is, well, it needs to be 99.39s, well, we're going to need to use some availability zones to achieve that. Now, if it's part of a disaster recovery and we need to have it kind of absolutely no exceptions to those 3 nines, then we need to talk about multi-region availability and disaster recover. And, are the backups adequate and the backup storage adequate? We can go a very deep dive. It's certainly a whole session unto itself, but availability zones in many of these kind of newer regions that have launched over the last year are really impressive, because I want to remind everybody we are dealing with a very real chip shortage, and Microsoft has been able to, let's say, sustain their manufacturing kind of supply chain in a way that they're still launching data centers and still upgrading hardware. And we're not feeling a big pinch in Azure services, kind of the way we did even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is really not a small accomplishment when we see these availability zone announcements. There's a lot under the hood, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And we're starting to see a lot of those organizations. Microsoft, it's not new in this case to the hardware world, right? With all of that,
Sure.
and we see other players
I'm a
like,
big
for
fan.
example, Google with the new announced Google Pixel, that it's very own first time chip that they are producing. For example, they
Yeah.
are not going
But
on.
you can't buy it in Canada right now, though.
You can't.
No, you can't get it in Canada yet.
Okay, I didn't know that. So see, another
Absolutely.
update not related to Azure.
I will say I had a very close heart-to-heart with Santa, and Santa was shopping around and had asked me some questions for some advice, and I did a little bit of research on his behalf, and I was very sad to see that. So it was restricted due to availability. So chip shortage, my friend.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
It is. It is a real thing. But what is real is the next update. Immutable storage with versioning for Blob Storage, it's not GA. And this is awesome, okay? Because
So
Immutable Storage,
I want to ask you first, as part of your explanation on this, can you tell all of our audience here today what is immutable storage and the backstory of why immutable storage is so important to us today?
so
And I apologize for
that's
interrupting
okay.
you.
I was
I
going on
wanted to
that
make
way.
sure we
I
include it
was
because I love the way you tell
I
this.
I was expecting
I'm just being
when
honest.
you starting that you were doing some of those crazy questions that I was like, oh my god, what am I going to say? But yeah, so
Why do I let this guy on the podcast again?
but in this case, immutable storage, okay, is it's based on a very nice word that is warm, okay, or what's called the warm state. That is the right ones read more or read many, okay. So basically, immutable storage is for those types of cases or scenarios that you just put the file or put the artifact there and you are reading. So a good example of this, okay, you might laugh or not, is the IT drive, okay, for ISOs. Okay, usually it's what comes to my mind. It's like our drive. Usually we put a document there, or we put the ISO there. We put all the tools that we want, and basically you just write once. You are not changing, right? And becomes a readable a source for everyone that you want. So it's awesome, for example, for those type of scenarios that you need just a read-only kind of way. You just write once, you're doing that, and you are basically increasing instead of the performance of the writing that you need performance to write. You just need that to read. So probably will work with a lot of cache, a lot of that. It will enhance that part. So the immutable storage now that you have versioning regarding the blob storage allows you to have those times that even if you're going on a version of the ISO, so I give you example like the ISOs that you can take from MSTN that once a month you can take the update of the ISO for the Windows Server 2019, for example, right? That you can upload that. You can have exactly the same name and you can have the versioning. So if anything happens or the retention period that you are setting for that, you can always come back to a version, to a previous version in this case, right? So be able to do this in GA right now, it's awesome, I have to say.
Absolutely. So, what are the two kind of, well, I shouldn't say it as a question, sorry. The two use cases that kind of come to my mind when I think about worm storage or immutable storage is really one, data protection. So if we think both underneath kind of the and pardon the pun, but maybe not so much the purview of uh, uh, you know protection, we have compliance,
Yes.
first of all, right? So we have maybe a legal requirement that file needs to be retained for 10 years. We write it, we know it's not going to be edited. The content is always going to be exactly the same. And then we can expire that after 10 years. The second case is short term. So there's a very real threat around ransomware,
Yeah.
which is write many times and encrypt the heck out of stuff. And then we're in a bit of a pickle. So there are some protections in that way against that type of a threat. So I loved your example of IT ISOs because when we get into the weeds of kind of an incident and we have to go very deep and do a full recovery, we need those ISOs and we need them to be true, right? So we need to know that it's a trusted source. So if we have immutable storage for our IT ISOs, we know we can get things like disk images out of there, and it's going to be reliable, so we can start deploying and patching and updating and doing things really quickly. So there's a lot of benefit to immutable storage. I think that kind of, I almost wish that Microsoft would market the immutable storage a little bit better, but at the same time, I get it, because if everybody jumps to it all at once, they will have capacity challenges because everybody would get too excited about it.
Absolutely, and it's not only on that perspective. It's like it needs to make sense on the scenario that you want. This is just
Yeah.
another scenario. It's another possibility that you have inside of the storage. In this case, part of Azure. So
Mhm.
if you look at, you have different type of containers. You have tables, you have blobs, you have blocks, you have a few other ones options that you can have over there. But not all the blob, for example, it's the best solution for what you need to do it regarding the way that you use the storage accounts. Okay, for example, that's why you have a diversity in this case of scenarios and solutions regarding the storage and regarding storage accounts. This one, it's another one that you can add for your scenarios for using, in this case, the storage accounts. It's one more reason to close what we call that gap between what we really need and what it is. Because if you remember, and this goes to back to one of the conversations I have with one customer not long time ago, explaining in this case the tiers of storage that you have and why is there, and especially not on storage accounts, but for example on Azure Monitor, right? Because on Azure Monitor, yes, you can have your, if you want, by default is 7 days on the free account, right? But
Mhm.
on the paid account, the pay as you go, it's 30 days. And if you look at, you can increase that without any issues, absolutely no issues. But you are,
It's only
it's only
money.
money, right? This is exactly that. It's only money. Why you need more than 30 days of your monitoring data to be able to just recover that fast and recover that? It makes totally sense. But if you want a little bit more, that window of 30 days, even for historical data, okay, or even to consult something like that, then the reason that you, why you have like ultra SSDs on all of that, if the storage is going to be there and is not going to be used, is like you want to get the power of the fast SSDs and MVEs and all of that technology, right? When you need it. You don't want to that for storage. So you want to, on the storage side of it, you are not too much of a concern of how much is going to take to read the document or write the document. Probably read is going to be way faster than write, right? But you just want to place the document there and almost forget it, right? So that's why
Yeah, absolutely.
even on our computers we have the NMVEs. That's where we put the operating system and the files that we want, and then we have those HDs, right? Those spinning disks that they are way more cheaper. So you can buy like 8 terabytes or whatever for like $100. And if you compare like an MVE of 128 gigs, it's going to cost $100 because there is no NMVE of 8 terabytes. Okay, for now, at least at my knowledge. But if you buy a 4 terabytes one, an MV costs like thousands of dollars because it's made
It's
for
pricey. Yeah.
different purpose, right? And I think this is important to just have another possibility, another scenario that you can use the storage. Uh, Sorry, I deviate a little bit more, but I think it's important to just cover that part. And apparently, I cover too much. So let's move to the next one.
It's not you, my friend.
I know it's been a long week. We know that.
It's been a week.
Let's move to the next one. And this one, I have to say that I'm really excited about it. It's the Azure Storage again. Okay. Attribute-based access control, the ABAC, conditions with principal attributes now in public preview. So, first and foremost, it's right. It's ABAC. It's not RBAC. Okay. RBAC is role-based access control. This is attribute-based access control. The big difference between the both, okay, is role-based access control is you attach to a role, you attach to a login, you attach to a user. The attribute-based access control, you attach to a servant principal, or in other words, for the people that comes from the data center world or from premise, service accounts. Okay, service accounts, the service accounts don't go like and press Alt Control Delete, okay, and going there and punch their username and the password. No, they are service accounts. So now we have this in public preview, but now we can control the access of those servant principals, okay, or security principles, resource requests, anything that we want through those attribute base. So it's the way that we can have exactly the same segregation that we were doing for years with RBAC, now with service principles or security principles, in this case, for applications, which is, oh my God, I raise my hands to say thank you, because it's another security layer that we have.
Absolutely. So we talked about this months ago when it hit. I think it was in private preview at that time. Yeah. And one of the interesting things about this is it's a complementary technology, right? So Azure ABAC builds on Azure RBAC.
Yes.
By adding those role assignment conditions based on the attributes in the context of specific actions. So I loved how you explained how service principal, security principal is kind of the Azure, it's the different equivalent of a service account. So with service accounts in ADDS on-prem, we would typically, I hope, we would typically block interactive session, right? Meaning that we don't allow that account to log into a Windows session, i.e. protecting against human compromise. Helping protect against. I shouldn't say it's the only protection. It's one of many.
Yes.
But yeah, so in this case, we use the role assignment condition as an additional check that we optionally add the role assignment to provide more fine-grained access controls, right? So kind of what does that mean? Why use those conditions? And I've pulled a couple of talking points when you were explaining there, because I really like the way that ABAC is a complementary technology. It allows us to increase security and add better controls, improve the existing controls on a way that's well established. Service accounts are a very common way to accomplish fixing a problem. Well, we need to have an account, but I don't want it to be a user account. What can I do with this? Well, this is what we do, right? So we can provide the more fine-grained access, and that's really role assignment using those role definitions with actions and data actions to grant security principal permissions.
Yes.
So we can filter them down and allow only, I think I still call them KBs in my head. I have to get out of that. The MS Docs example is that we use data tags to drive access.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to see how the technologies really tie together, and how a really good governance strategy is more than just data governance. It can also drive security
Absolutely.
and better ways to protect that data and the environment and the business and the IP contained in that data. Really powerful tool.
Absolutely. And this update, right? And this, I think it really benefits in three areas. First of all, it enables a finer grain access to resources. So again, this is going to follow the best practices to give only what you need, especially for those type of security principles, right? Like the service least access. That is one of them. And by doing that, it goes to the not to the second benefit that goes directly that indirectly is directly connected. That is reducing the role assignments of that you have to create and manage, because
Yep, that's true.
If you are giving only what you need, you don't need to create too many roles for this, right? Because you still need to create the roles to give access, but you don't need to create and manage those role assignments, because now you have that security principle, and regarding those attributes, you just give that, and it's way easy to control. And the third, that is connected to the first two, is to control those rules, okay, of attributes on a way that mean something to the business. So if you want, for example, to express, like you mentioned, some conditions and some attributes to represent, for example, a project name, a business application, or a function that you have, you can have that and expressing that inside of this ABAC, and which is awesome, which is allows you. It's not like it's not going to resolve all the world's problem, but it will increase the security of your environment, because you are taking down way more. It's like I always when I'm teaching in this case on the security courses, and especially related to ABAC, is like, if you are sure that you need all of those 100 permissions, for example, that group F, absolutely use the built-in. But if your group or if your user only needs those 99 of the 100, create a group for those 99. Because the difference of those 99 to 100 could be able to destroy your environment without you knowing. And then it's better to say, there is a wording for that, but it's better to just be precautious than say sorry, right?
Absolutely.
And that's one of always the times that when I'm on a classroom, I always try to teach, is those moments, because I've been there, and I know how painful it is to just recover, and how painful for the company, and how much effort and money and everything it is to recover from one of those disasters, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard on the company's wallet.
Absolutely.
But it's also really hard on the people that have to work through that recovery, because it's extremely stressful, it's taxing, and I had the privilege of working with somebody, and I remember we worked through a recovery situation in one customer environment, and he described it to me as, you know what, I feel we've built a really good bond with the team. We've been through the trenches together now.
Yeah.
And it really is a good description, because you're very stressed. It's high pressure. There is a lot at stake. It's the company's livelihood, because we have to get everything back operational again, right? And that's really the kind of the driving force behind recovery. And I really loved your description around that. I actually had a chat with a customer this week around, hey, when you log into our system, you're just going to have to phone us, because our conditional access policies will probably prevent you from doing what you want to do.
Exactly.
So And I said, hey, that's actually great news, because usually by the time you're phoning me, it's really the other end of the scale where, oh man, we wish that we'd had tighter conditional access policies because it could have prevented something. And that's really important to know,
Yeah,
right? So this is
absolutely.
one of the complementary tools that can help support better security overall. And it doesn't have to be a big uphill climb. It's one piece of the pie, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not the last Azure Storage update. We have another one that is Azure Storage Secure Access to Storage Account from Virtual Network Subnets in any region now in public preview. So again, this is another way that you can protect your storage account by giving secure access only from networks or subnets from any region that you provided. So you can configure, in this case, a rule of a virtual network rule for that specific subnet to say that, hey, only this amount of subnets are allowed to connect to this storage account, which is awesome because now, for example, you can segregate that you can control what is accessing what, and you can have mechanisms of, for example, not going outside of the region, because this will kill too many birds at one stone. It's a secure one,
Yeah.
okay. As we already, it's on a title, but it's also an operational one, because if you want to make sure that you are not having egress traffic, for example, okay, you can make sure that you can create a storage account that is there, that you can have, for example, let's call it read-only geo-replication, okay, to another region, and is still available on another region, but you are only locking down on that storage account, for example, on that region. And now you are not going outside of that region to access that storage account, for example. Okay.
Exactly.
So it gives a lot of possibilities, not only on the security perspective, but on operational one and on cost savings, because it's everything together. It's not like
Exactly.
this is only for the security part of it. Yes, it will increase the security, like we mentioned on the previous update, but it gives the possibility of thinking outside of the box, and thinking on the ways that you can implement a solution that is better for the customer at all points, like on a security point of view, on the cost management point of view, on the operational side point of view, and all of that, right? At least this is what I take out of this update, but it's still in public preview. I really want
It is.
this to come. That, do you have anything to add on this update?
Well, I was just thinking about a couple of things. I think low hanging fruit first, right? GDPR. So, what a great way to help support compliance
Absolutely.
at the configuration layer, right? So, we can kind of build out our kind of compliance requirements right into the infrastructure. So, for me, that's kind of the first thing that jumps out of like, oh, hey, what a great way to help with that. But also, I was thinking about kind of our natural region pairs that we have. And we can allow a storage account and lock it down to our primary and secondary region and prevent access from other regions. So it's a way to help restrict potential other compromise, or to just say, hey, we might have different regional requirements, but this is our preferred DR zone or whatever. And you can kind of work within that. And it just helps to build out those kind of barriers
Yeah.
to prevent data egress where we need to have some virtual barriers in place with it. So those are kind of the two things that really stuck out a bit for
No,
me here.
absolutely. And again, we can be here for internally just talking about the scenarios that this will enable us to create and to develop regarding this feature that is being in public preview. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a good point. This one is still in preview,
Yeah.
so the usual warning will say,
Exactly.
if you haven't heard our warning, watch any episode. You'll you'll hear any episode.
Exactly.
You'll hear us in there. But I do want to say, just I know that was our last one with storage, but I want to say thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. And again, don't forget, like and subscribe. Let us know. Leave a little comment. We absolutely love hearing from everybody. Doesn't have to be a positive one. If you have something you want to weigh in and make a correction as I ramble on and on about different things, by all means, weigh in the comments and let us know. Marcos replies with a loving hug to each one.
Yes,
every single
I
time.
try that. I try to correspond the love that we're receiving all the time. Absolutely. And with that, like you said, this is the end of our podcast. It was, I have to say, I have to confess, a little bit longer than I was anticipated. But it is like a conversation. We don't have like a script like we mentioned at the beginning. And it was a very, I love this part. This is the part again. I've not been saying that too many times, but I love this part of the week. As far as it's the end of the week, it's where I can disconnect from the world. In this case, if I may say so, or at least shut down my computer, and then only on Monday coming back to work. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Andrew, for being part of this. Without you, it's going to be very difficult to have a discussion. It's going to be a monologue. And
Well, we can have a discussion that just looks a little bit more
exactly,
streamlined when it's recorded.
absolutely, and way more work on after processing the video, because I have to record the question and then record
record
the
the instead
answer,
of it.
and like it's going to be really, yeah. No,
I like it. I'd watch that episode. Absolutely.
don't tease me. I might do something like that. But thank you very much for keeping. Don't forget to subscribe. Give us some love. We love that. And in this case, I hope I can see you next week. And bye for now.